Hello, Melissa Crook here with the F.E.E.L Podcast. Here are your ways to engage with our new episode, Rooted in Values, Honoring Your Emotional, Personal, and Professional Growth with Tina Mistry. Journal your values in different areas of your life, such as professional, personal, emotional, spiritual. You get the idea. Continue to check in with yourself from time to time and journal these values as things change. Are there any similarities or themes? Is there a shift in your values? Is there a constant value that has remained over time? This is a really important check-in process to do throughout your year, your month, different seasonal changes to make sure that you're still living your life in alignment with where you are currently. So I hope these give you really helpful ways to engage with this great discussion with my friend Tina Mistry, Rooted in Values, Honoring Your Emotional, Personal, and Professional Growth. Thanks so much for being with us. Hello, F.E.E.L Podcast audience. Welcome back this week. I'm here today with a friend that I've known less than a year, but I feel like I've known forever. She's just one of those people where we connected right away. I met her here in Fresno, where I live, through my membership at the Fresno County Women's Chamber of Commerce. And I think I met her at my first meeting, actually, last summer. And we just connected. We met right away. She's been on panels with us. You've heard her voice before. Now you get to meet her individually, one-on-one. And I've got Tina Mistry here with me today. And she describes herself as thoughtful, strategic, and committed. And she said those things. She's like, this might be a reach. I'm like, not at all. That's exactly how I see you. And better off, you see yourself that way, which I love. Tina, welcome to the F.E.E.L Podcast.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here and kind of have this conversation. And thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I can't wait to get into and share all that you have to offer to women, to people, and your why behind doing it. It's really going to come through as we share your story today, but also how you balance everything, because you have a lot of roles. I mean, you run an organization where you are the boss, the manager, the owner, all those things. You have a family of some kids that are pretty young. You have a partner. So you're wearing all these different hats. And so you've really had to get creative on how you show up in all of these spaces as authentically and healthily as you can. So I think that's going to give a good lens to women on how you do this, because so many women are in the space you're in. And I know you're going to have a lot to offer them today. So let's get right into it. Prioritizing self-care in your life. Yeah. Talk to me about your journey with that.
Yeah, it's been kind of interesting. So, like you mentioned, I own my own business. I'm a financial planner. I've been doing this for about 20 years now. Bought the business from the previous owners. So juggled sort of building a career into sort of this, I guess, to a certain degree, entrepreneurship life. I'm a mom of two. My kids are 5 and 2, or 6 and 2, when this episode comes out. And, the other thing too, that I find a lot of joy in sort of being involved in is in the community. So through the chamber, through various nonprofits, through my alma mater, Fresno State. Definitely a lot to juggle, but I think, I'm very passionate about the things that I decide to get involved in. So that sort of helps from a mental standpoint. But, what I'll say first is that prioritizing self-care does not come naturally to me. I think through some of the episodes I've listened of yours, Melissa, that I don't think it comes easy to a lot of women. So, I think I just want to fully recognize that. It's been a slow process. I think I just sort of take it a day at a time. Some of the things I do are really small in nature. So, listening to favorite podcasts of mine, listening to music. One thing I recently started doing was on Spotify. I used to be really a really big music collector when I was a
Mm.
teenager,
Mm-hmm.
and then into my 20s, and then I got a full-time job, and that stopped. So
And life happened.
So I couldn't go to, the proverbial record store and go buy all the music I wanted to. So my husband introduced me to Spotify a few years ago, and then just recently I started thinking about, some of my favorite sort of albums and started downloading those on Spotify and go back and listen to those. So I'm kind of in this sort of 90s R&B hip hop phase right now. So that gives me a lot of joy. Um, and I feel like it almost helps me sort of reminisce back to the days when I didn't have kids and didn't have a huge load of commitment. And that sort of puts me in a good mental space.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I watched, favorite TV shows. I especially love comedies. I really enjoy listening and watching to various comedy specials and a variety of comedians, especially there's some really amazing comedians that are women out there
Yes.
that they talk about like all the mom stuff, all the women stuff, and it's just like, oh yeah, I totally know what you're I can totally relate to that. So that's a lot of fun. So yeah, so it's really a lot of small things that I do for self-care because
Mhm.
again, sometimes it's very sort of small amounts of time that I have, or it's in between changing a diaper and feeding another kid or something like that. So yeah, and in the occasion where I maybe get a couple hours to myself or something, I can never pass up a good massage. So I try to do that too. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
a lot of little things. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of little things. I think that you hit on some important things. You found those things, those activities that nourish you, those things that lift your spirit, and you've weaved them into your day and into your spaces. And I think that's such a key component here. And you said something earlier that this is hard for a lot of women. It is hard for a lot of women because it's not the script we got. It's not the
Right.
script we got. It's not what we even necessarily saw modeled to us.
Right. Exactly.
And so in order to like get to us, we really have to go on our own journey and realize, and I think we're starting to see more and more of that now, where it's like, no, this old script and old narrative is not serving. And we're just not going to generationally carry that on. And so making that shift and that awareness within that so that you can show up the way you want to in this space. You also, you appeared with us on our New Year Take Care of You panel because you show up for people and you really, especially, you help all people, but you help women with their finances who maybe haven't had an appetite for that before. And maybe they've been forced into a situation, whether through loss of someone, a divorce, whatever the case may be, they didn't learn about it from their parents, whatever it was, of helping them get confident in their finances. And financial health is a part of our self-care. And you very clearly articulate that, you realize that, you present it in a very personable and approachable way.
Absolutely.
And I think that is such an important piece of not only what you offer, but how you offer it. You're very philanthropic. You know the power of women coming together and supporting each other. You're a woman-owned business yourself. And I think, it's important for us to talk about that these are all pieces that fit into our self-care.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we talked about it during the panel discussion in terms of just, gosh, how tough it can be, how overwhelming it can be to get a handle on finances, especially if it hasn't been your thing. Usually, in a traditional couple, when they kind of walk into my office, it is usually the male sort of leading. I will say, I think just over the course of the last couple of years, as we grow our clientele, I have seen more women taking the lead, which is great. I think that's fantastic. Honestly, I like a balanced approach. So whether it's,
Yeah.
a male or female coming in and maybe the male's more dominating the conversation, or maybe the female in some cases, I really make a point to try to engage both, eye contact, physical behavior, making sure, I address, okay, Mrs. Smith, did you have any questions too? Or, does that make sense to you, Mrs. Smith, or something like that? So really trying to make a conscious effort to engage everybody in the room when it comes to managing their finances is super important. And I know we're going to, talk a little bit about the importance of having a why, and I want to maybe even elaborate on that journey of how I got to my sort of personal why statement. But I think that one of the things I've realized in the course of doing this for almost 20 years is that money is a very sensitive topic. A lot of people may come in, whether they're wealthy or not, they have some sort of maybe quote unquote shame about how they've managed their finances, or maybe they don't know something that they feel like they should. And I think they come in feeling like they're going to be judged. And I think that's something that I've personally strived as an advisor, is to make sure it's a no judgment zone. I know what it's like to be broke. I know what it's like to be well taken care of. And I know what it's like to be broke again. I've gone through sort of that cycle in my life. And I know how it feels in terms of being judged by people who you think are supposed to be in your corner, being judged by people who you don't even know. All of the above. And whether, somebody comes in with $1 or $1 million, I make it a point to make sure that they feel like it's a safe space to talk. It's a safe space to share what's on their mind, what their concerns are, what they're scared about, what keeps them up at night. And that's really a really important part of the journey, I think.
Yeah, I love the way you laid that out. We're going to come back to some of that stuff in a moment here. So hold on to some of those thoughts.
You got it.
Before we get into that, talk to me about confidently setting boundaries. When you own your own business, it's real easy to just work all the time, but you can't do that, or you'll burn yourself out. Not to mention, you got little ones at home that are waiting for your attention when you walk through the door, and a partner relationship, and just yourself. So talk to me about that boundaries piece and balancing all of that.
Yeah, I think something I've done over the last couple of years, again, especially having 2 kids and everything going on, as crazy as it sounds, I plan out my entire year sometime in like December of the previous year. So I literally look at the entire 12 months ahead of me, and I decide, okay, the first week, I'll just kind of throw this out there. The first week of every month, no client meetings, no personal meetings. It's all about focusing on the business. So whether it's going out there networking, building a strategic plan, checking up on goals, maybe watching a webinar or two to educate myself on a particular aspect, that's the first week of every month. And then usually the next 2 or 3 weeks of the month are client meetings. So that time is in service to clients, and a lot of the service things that we do as a team here to ensure clients are taken care of is focused on that. So I'll just sort of block out my calendar on Outlook. Like I'm just like a maniac about it. And then the other thing I do too, as sort of a part of that exercise, is I will block out days or particular weeks. So I'll pencil in my vacations first. I'll pencil in like, maybe there's a day or two where it's like kids' doctor's appointments, my doctor's appointments, personal errands, just all that kind of stuff in one day. And just really focus on time blocking, because one, it helps me be more efficient with my time. But then I'm also not like doing this sort of brain switch between like work and personal. And that can be in and of itself extremely exhausting. So I try to do that. I communicate with my team in the office all the time. I tell them, hey, you know what? Next week's my son's birthday. I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to do this. Or I've already planned it out. So yeah, I'll even like plan for days where I'm just not doing anything. Hopefully maybe going and getting that massage that I've been wanting for the last couple months or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Just time blocking, really people think of it as more of a work thing. I really think of it more as both personal and work.
Yeah.
And I think like a lot of people sort of say, okay, well, gosh, you really should be focusing on the business or focusing on your clients and that sort of thing. And I 100% agree. But I think on one of your previous episodes, you talked about how, taking time off or just sort of relaxing isn't really lazy. It's actually should be, a part of the routine. It's actually a good thing to do. And I heard a really great quote from another person in my industry that said like, planning for time off or resting or taking care of yourself should be a prerequisite for doing good work, and not a reward. And that's really how I sort of look at that and how I look at that and plan for that and sort of put myself in a positive mindset so that I don't feel guilty about it. So
yeah, it's making it a non-negotiable. Like this is part of my process to make sure I'm refreshed and renewed and showing up in all of my spaces the way that I want to show up, present in the moment, not distracted, not irritable, all those things. I love that this idea that that we only can rest after we've ran ourselves ragged is a capitalistic idea that is really, really damaging to our health. And no one wins when we do that. I mean, it's this idea that, probably starts back to, getting history on us here. Industrial revolution is just like ran like wildfire and, and it's just like, no, this is not sustainable. Why do we want to do that to ourselves? We want to be in this for the long haul, but we want to live a full life well in all of our spaces. So getting rid of this idea that it's earned and making it part of what we do. I love the time blocks. And I think that's such an important, especially when you have all the pieces and layers to your life that you do. That's really smart. And it makes sure that you're able to really show up and hit in all cylinders the way you want to in all the spaces and places. And I love that you get on a year before in advance. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
I mean, not to say, and again, I don't want this coming off as like being sort of perfect in terms of how everything's sort of flows, because like, oh, trust me, like there have been so many sort of curveballs thrown at me this year so far where I've had to just sort of rearrange and readjust. So that is just sort of an expectation I even build into it. And I try to build in, maybe some wiggle room or some wiggle time to account for the unexpected. But it really, I mean, I tell everybody on my team, like I live and die by my calendar, and it's what keeps me sane and just sort of having that sort of level of organization and again, putting myself in the right mindset, because, the other thing too, I was going to say was, if I have a bad day or, just something just sort of negative happens and I'm headed into a client meeting where I'm supposed to be giving advice and supposed to be helping somebody and giving them the right direction, like I've got to be in a good mindset for that. So if all I'm doing is client meetings on a particular day, I'm in that zone, if you will, throughout the day or throughout that entire week. And I feel like that sort of builds on itself in weeks like that too. No.
Yeah, 100%. And what this gives you by this planning and having this count, it gives you a framework. And then you've got, flexibility within the framework and the expectation that things can come up, but it gives you a framework to operate off of to keep you on track. I mean, that's a lot what I talk about, these talking points that I use, this framework when I speak to women, when I present to women, I'm like, listen, life happens. That's why we need a framework to keep us in place, to keep asking ourselves the questions that are going to help us get back in alignment when we get out of it. That's a great example of a framework that you've set up for yourself that allows you to stay on track and gives you kind of a compass, to follow.
Yeah.
And with knowing there's still room for life to happen. It's not so rigid that you don't understand that, but it gives you that blueprint. I think that's a great example. Thank you. Okay, this is going to take us back to some things you said when we were talking about self-care, but taking care of our emotional health, mental health, physical health, spiritual health. One, that's a piece and component of our health that we're really, I think, just starting to talk about over the last 5 to 10 years, the fact that they're all connected. Within that, for you, it's a necessary component, I would imagine, just because of the different layers you have in your life. But then also, too, when you're helping clients, you mentioned earlier, money can bring up a lot of emotions with people.
Absolutely.
And so you're going to be dealing with a lot of those emotions, helping them walk those out and get to a place where it feels doable, where it feels safe, where they feel empowered. But then you also have to kind of be in a space where you're not taking on those emotions yourself. So I mean, you're like a financial advisor / therapist sometimes. And it's like, wait a minute, I did not get my LMFT. God, that wasn't part of the deal. So talk to me about kind of, how you manage the different layers of that.
Yeah. With clients, it's definitely a fine balance between being empathetic and, just sort of listening, right? Just being a sounding board for them, but then also, keeping them accountable, right? If I have a client who says, gosh, I'm going through, XYZ situation and I'm having to spend, more money than I expected. And, hearing them out and understanding and understanding where they're coming from. And at least, listening is a huge part of my job. So, really just being there and listening. But then also, if they say that, they're overspending and it's derailing, their plans for retirement, let's say, they want to retire at a certain age. And I kind of say, well, if you continue to spend this way, you're going to have to work a couple extra years. And they're like, well, no, we can't have that happen. Well, I'm like, well, here's all the things you need to do to, make that happen. Yeah. So it's a fine balance because again, like you said, life happens. And life throws us curveballs and we've got to be willing to adjust for that. But at the same time, keeping ourselves accountable and keeping ourselves sort of being very self-aware, I guess is maybe another way to say it.
Yeah.
And making sure, are we self-sabotaging or not? And that kind of thing. So yeah, I think, in terms of, some of the toughest conversations I have with clients are, I remember having a client that came in and they lost their job and it was like their entire world was falling apart. Clients come in and they've just lost a spouse or they're getting a divorce or, you name the sort of tragedy, right? That life throws our way. Those are not easy conversations. And I think I find a lot of maybe comfort in terms of, maybe not quote unquote taking that home with me, but I find a lot of comfort in just talking with my teammates here in the office, my colleague AJ, who's the other lead advisor here, we sort of just kind of go back and forth about, well, what was your meeting like? Or what was your meeting like? And just sort of air it out. And I think that's half the battle. It's just, you almost feel like when you talk about it, it's off of your shoulders and it's in the atmosphere. And you're not the one carrying it anymore. So I think stuff like that happens. I think one of the things too, just in terms of the emotional side of it, we started this thing in the office called let me see if I can say it without getting my words twisted, a client kudos corner. So we have a bulletin board that's right outside of my office and my colleague AJ's office. We can see it from our eye line where we sit at our desks. And anytime a client gives us some words of affirmation or gratitude or sends me a nice text or whatever it is, if we feel like it's impactful, we throw it on the board. And anytime we are feeling like just horrible and having a bad day, I go and I read some of those notes because it centers us back to why we do what we do, why we care for the people we care for. And, as bad as, conversations can get, just sort of centering us back to that purpose. And that's been really, really helpful. So.
Oh, I love that. That's so smart. That's so helpful. We talked about on a panel that I recorded yesterday, the power of, a couple of us brought up, if someone has if you come across, and we were talking about women in this case, and it can be anybody, if you've come across a woman who has impacted you in a positive way, in a helpful way, in a way that was just made a difference for you, it made a shift for you, was something you needed to hear, whatever it was, make sure you let them know. Because I think so many times we just assume, well, they must know. They do this kind of work. They must know how valuable they are. They must, maybe you don't know how many tough things they've had to deal with that day and how much pushback they've gotten. You just never know what people's inner stories are. So taking that opportunity to tell people the impact they've had on you, you just never know what that's going to do for someone's mood, how they feel about their work they're doing. Giving, maybe it's just that legitimization they need for that day. Absolutely. So I love that.
I think, for whatever reason, like, I don't do compliments well. I don't know what it is. Maybe that's something else we'll unpack at some point.
I know. I don't either. Well. I know. I don't either.
I want to run and hide, my cheeks get red. I just don't do it well. But when I do get those compliments now, again, we kind of have this outlet to, this bulletin board that we use. We have an outlet for that. But then I would also say too, in turn, I think it's made me be more outspoken about how appreciative I am. So of what other people do too. So, I see a post on LinkedIn of somebody doing something amazing out in the community, and that's something that resonates with my values in terms of giving back. And I'll post, I'll make more of an effort to post and say, hey, that is such a cool project that you're doing, or that's such a great nonprofit, or, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. Show that I appreciate, like you said, appreciate the work that they're doing and the impact they're making. It's made me more conscious of that and doing that and making an effort to do that. Not to say I'm not an appreciative person, but showing it is always maybe has been tough for me. So
I think those are things that are swimming around in our head, and we just don't slow down. It's that slowing down and being present and mindful. And you do that really well. You really do. You are great at celebrating the people around you. I've seen you in action doing that. And this goes nice. You're welcome. You're welcome. And this really goes nicely into how we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. You model this what feels very seamless to me. You show up unapologetically yourself. You're very authentic. This is who I am. You're very organic. You're very engaging. Like, you have all those that you just really, to me, feel naturally wired that way. And you also show up, in the way you show up and the things you're involved in. I mean, we are involved in multiple organizations together, Fresno County Women's Chamber. You are the chair of the board for the Gender and Leadership, consortium that we're a part of at Fresno State University, supporting students, primarily women's students. And you are a key sponsor for the work we do at Fresno County Women's Chamber. Like, you're out there in the community. I go to look at Tina's LinkedIn, and they are supporting. I mean, but you're smart about it too. You're strategic about it in the places you show up, but you're very intentional. So you very naturally show up for yourself and other women unapologetically.
Thank you.
Is this a space you've always felt at home in? How did you get here, or you just feel like you came out that way?
That's a really great question. I think what I'll say is that I think it's taken me time to get here. Mm-hmm. I can't say that I have a secret, Melissa. I'll be 40 this year. And again, maybe that's something else we need to unpack. But I can't say that in my 20s I felt as just mentally confident as I do
Mm,
now. And
sure.
I think it's just time and experience, whether that's in my
Ah,
profession or having some actual life experience, having kids is a life experience of itself. Being married is a life experience, and managing, a relationship with your spouse is life experience. And I feel like, you get to a certain place where you just feel a little bit more comfortable in your own skin, and you
mhm,
just show up, and it's like, I almost sort of say like, gosh, you know what? I'm going to do my best to connect with people, but if they don't want to connect with me, or, just sort of some sort of negative energy happens in the room, just
mhm.
move on with my day. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I just let it roll right off my shoulders. And again, I think, again, that's just time and experience. And then, the other thing I'll add too is, a lot of my line of work, a lot of the community involvement I do, it's all about building relationships. And
Mhm.
as soon as I don't know if you've ever met Beth Bridges, but she did our speed networking thing at the
Oh, yeah, yeah,
chamber
yeah.
a
Yeah,
few years
yeah.
ago. I've
Yep.
actually known her for a really long time. We sort of fell out of
Oh.
touch. But she was the first person who really taught me what true networking was. You show
Mm.
up and you figure out how you can help the person across the room. And I was just like, that is so genius. Like, that,
Yeah.
I think that's the approach I have when I decide to join a nonprofit board. I decide to, obviously, my line of work and running my business, coming to chamber events or whatever it is. I'm just like, I go at it with an attitude of like, I'm just here to help people. And I know for certain it has come back to me tenfold.
Yeah.
But um, I think when you just go in with sort of that positive mindset, and that's not always easy to do, but
Right.
when you just go into it with like the best of intentions,
Mhm.
um, I just feel like it all sort of works itself out in some fashion.
Well, and I like to, it takes the pressure off. I think in network events, we can really freak ourselves out. I'm not an
Sure.
extrovert, those kinds of things. But if you go in with that mindset of like, okay, how can I help people in the room? Then you've got a kind of a purpose and a like, oh, I can connect with that. That's a good starter for a conversation. I think that
Yeah.
really makes it feel, more practical, doable, relatable,
Yeah.
connectable. It takes the pressure
Yeah.
off. You also work in an industry that's very male dominated. So this piece of being able to show up and apologetic as yourself, I think is really key here. I think you were going to say something right before that. So go ahead and say what you were going to say. And
Oh
then,
yeah, no, I think, yeah, no, sorry, no, I think one of the other sort of things too is, so sometimes when we go out to these community events, whatever they may be, networking or otherwise, and let's say you only get a chance to talk to a couple people, maybe you were there to network and pass out business cards, and maybe you don't necessarily get the opportunity to do that, or maybe like the turnout's low or something like that,
yeah.
and I'm not sure what clicked with me a really long time ago, but I always went into those situations and tried to find the opportunity in the situation, right? So
Mm,
if I go
yeah.
to an organization's event, maybe there's not a lot of turnout. What's sort of driving that? Where can I maybe step in and help? Or, who did I have a chance to talk to? Maybe, the event coordinators or the chairs of the board were there, and I had a deeper conversation with them, better than I would have had if there were hundreds of people there or something like that. And
Yeah.
I think that's something I really try to instill with my team, because my team is significantly younger than me here in the
Yeah.
office.
Yeah.
But I really try to instill with them, like, if you sit on a webinar, or you sit in on a lecture, or you got to go to a class that has nothing to do with your major, finding the opportunity in that, finding maybe one or two takeaways, if you sort of approach things in that manner, I guarantee people will walk away and learn something from any experience that they have. And um, I think I get it from, well, now I kind of know where I get it from, but I think I get it from the experience I had when working in my parents' business and dreading it
Mm,
so much. And I look back on that doing what I do now, and I'm like, gosh, that's where my customer service comes from. That's where my thoughtfulness comes from. That's where, me going over and beyond for a client, that's where it comes from. It's from those experiences. So.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. I love that. Okay. So back to, so you are in a very male dominated industry.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the ability to show up unapologetically in that space. You've had some key men that have supported your journey,
Absolutely.
which I think is such an important part of, like, yes, we women need each other and we need to support each other and be united voices. I talk about that all the time. It's also very important that we have some men along the way that are supporting this as well. And you've had that. So talk to me about that piece too.
Yeah, just for maybe a little added context too. So, about a year before I graduated from Fresno State was when I got hired on at Portfolio Advisors, just kind of front office admin work, broke college student, needed a job, answered phones, filled out paperwork, etc. A friend referred me to my former bosses, and really the rest is history. I think so the gentleman that started the firm, his son took it over. And then there was another gentleman here who was a lead advisor as well. So they kind of, the three of them worked together for a really long time. And that's, when I kind of came into the fold, along with the other sort of admin person at that time. And so it's, it's three males, running the show, managing the client relationships, doing all of this sort of, high level advisory work. And I think I just really took to the technical side of what we did, learning all the ropes. And I was able to sit in and observe things and ask questions and all of that. And they never shut me down. And when they gave me a full-time job with the, opportunity to become an advisor, it just happened very organically. It wasn't like this big old parade of oh my gosh, you're such an amazing female and blah, blah, blah. And it was just like, Tina, you do great work. You ask good questions. You're reliable. You're trustworthy. Here's an opportunity. It would just sort of plug and play, and they didn't make this huge big deal about it, but they also didn't underestimate me either. And I think it was just sort of like this person who happens to be a woman has got it. She knows what she's doing and she's really good at it, and we don't want to lose her. And they valued me. I think, telling me that I did good work and showed how much they valued me was a huge piece of that. And they just never shied away from stuff like that. And I think, they made great sort of examples of how to serve clients and how to be there for them and all those things that you need to have as a good, good traits of being an advisor. Sure. But just from a mentoring standpoint, it was just I think I've told you this before. They never told me no. They never doubted me. They just sort of said, okay, well, if you want to try it. Ask me, let me know if you have questions, or, here's kind of generally some career path things that you need to be aware of. Oh, hey, there's this really interesting, article I read, or, webinar, or whatever it is, this really great resource, Tina, I think you should, listen to this or read this. They just always brought me in the fold. And like I said, they just never made a big deal out of it. But it was just sort of how it sort of transpired. And I think male counterparts in this industry just need to do more of that. I've not to digress here, but I've interviewed, several females now as an owner of a firm. And when we're hiring and stuff, I've interviewed several females. And the stories they tell me about their male counterparts and why they're leaving the firms that they're leaving, I'm just like, how dare they speak to these women like that? That it's just shocking. And that was just never my experience. So I feel very, very fortunate, of course. Yeah. But it's just so important for basically just to be treated like an equal counterpart.
Yeah. I love that example you laid out, because it's exactly what you said. This is how it should be. You were capable, you were hardworking, you were smart, you showed up, and they honored that.
Yes.
Period. period.
Yeah.
And that, it was just like, man, that should not be the exception. That should be the rule. And if we could get to a place where that's the rule, then it's going to change a lot of things for people. And it's also going to change the trajectory of women feeling like there's a place for them in these industries. Because so much of our work, going back to our gal work, is preparing these women. Primarily, it can be anybody can get involved with this, but mostly women that we're dealing with, to go out in the world confidently, to go out in the world feeling like they belong, to have a voice, to be seen and to be heard. So regardless of whatever they run into, they're not going to be derailed when, if that situation comes up where maybe they need to speak up for themselves or need to make sure they're not interrupted and make sure they're valued, that they've got the framework they need to go out and do that. But if we could create more experiences like the one you're talking about, yes, we still absolutely want to prepare them because life happens and coworkers and bosses can be tricky on both male or female. I mean,
right.
But you take away a significant challenge when you have the experience you had.
Yeah. I think just going back to the GAL program a little bit, I remember the leadership at the business school sharing with me. I don't know if it was a study at the business school or just a study across, colleges nationwide, but, females are not going after the jobs that they think that they're very interested in, but they don't think that they're capable of because they don't meet, all the expectations or the whatever the job criteria was, or they just sort of felt, oh no, that's too much above what I'm able to do. And I remember sitting there scratching my head thinking like, I didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that way going into becoming an advisor, even though like I didn't know any better, first of all, that it was such a male dominated industry. I just like, okay, well, this is the office that I'm in. Great. No harm, no foul. But once I started going to conferences and stuff, it was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm, maybe one of very few female, even fewer of color. So that's a whole
you've got all those layers to factor in here.
Yeah. So I remember when I heard them talk about the GAL program, what was sort of the impetus for starting that. And I just remember thinking like, gosh, that's not my experience. And I was just like, I never felt that way. And again, it has a lot to do with the environment I came from, and those male counterparts of mine basically just having that confidence and not doubting me.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I think with the GAL program too, just really instilling that confidence or showing really great examples of females who are in these various leadership positions and just really shooting for the moon. And, I know over the last year of being involved, even just, recently with the end of year event, I find inspiration in some of those leaders and whatnot too. And it just reassures me that, I'm doing the right things as well. So yeah. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. I'm so glad they have it. And like I said, I feel very fortunate that has not been my experience, but I definitely recognize in talking with others that is unfortunately what they experience. So
yeah, absolutely. All right. The importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values. This is a big piece for you. So talk to me about how this plays into how you're engaged in the world today.
Yeah, so I hopefully I don't overstay my welcome here, but this has been something I've really focused on in the last few years and really have kind of had a little bit of an evolution around it. So let me just kind of go back a little bit and share. So you've probably heard of Simon Sinek's Start With Why.
Yeah.
Wonderful book. A few years ago, I was feeling stuck. I had made a very expensive business decision that did not go my way. Won't go into details, but let's just say it was not my proudest moment. And I felt like I had done all of the research and analysis on it was a change in technology we were making in the office. And I felt like I had done my due diligence. And then several months into the process, the entire thing blows up and I have to pay a lot of money to get out of contracts and all that kind of stuff. And it was all very doable, but I was just like, oh my God, like, what am I doing here? Like, it just made me just question everything. Right.
Yeah.
So,
shakes your confidence when those things happen.
100%. And I just really kept asking myself, like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? And then I picked up Simon Sinek's book, fantastic book, great examples. And then I was like, okay, so if I'm going to do this, I need to come up with my why statement. So I read Find Your Why, which is the actual activity of putting together a why statement. The questions that it asks you, I even did like the online workshop and stuff too. So it was
my daughters dove way into this in an internship a few years ago. And it was really, really incredible.
Yeah. And the other thing too that I was thinking is like, if I'm going to build this firm and get the investment of my team members and really try to shoot for the moon with the business, I used to find it very cliche. Oh, you got to have a why statement, you got to have values, mission, all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 blah. Right. And then when I finally did it, I was just like, oh, I get it now. And the questions that Find Your Why sort of takes you through. And I know you probably do this, with the women you work with too.
Yeah.
But some of the questions that it asks you, who were some really influential people in your life? I think, when did you feel like somebody was really there for you? When did you feel like somebody wasn't really there for you? Some of those questions that really, I like to journal. So I journaled the answers to these questions. And then it forces you to find like an underlying theme in some of those stories and stuff that you've told. And my underlying theme was support. The word support. So I found, even going back to like high school, I found examples of teachers that supported me. I remember a teacher who helped a friend of mine win a state championship for a nerdy club called Science Olympiad, and how important that was like the center of our world at that point in time. And that particular teacher helped us do that. I think too, the supportive nature of like my male counterparts that supported me here in my career. And then I even thought back to areas that I didn't feel supported. About 10 years ago or so, my family and my parents specifically went through some really tough financial times, and I had to help them get out of that. And we were not supported by very many people. It was 4 of us, including my brother. We had to figure it out and get through it. And the amount of judgment we felt from others, including family members, was just tremendous.
Wow.
And so this sort of idea of support in times where you felt it and times that you didn't, and what those two things, those two different opposites sort of felt like. And my why statement is to support people in their best and worst moments, so everyone has someone looking out for their best interests.
And that's good.
It really sort of, again, going through that process of figuring out that why statement and something that I can verbally share with people or can verbalize or put into words why I do what I do has been really, really impactful.
Yeah.
And then carrying on that story, and I promise I'll wrap it up, Melissa.
No, this is great. This is so good.
Carrying on that, going back to what I was feeling in the business, I said, okay, now that I have my personal why statement, I now know why I'm a planner, why I'm a financial advisor, because I want to be there for people. I want people to feel supported, and I know what happens when they don't. Bad
Yeah.
things happen, especially when it comes to money. Bad things happen when people don't have support, when they don't have resources, when they don't have that sounding board.
Yeah.
So then what we did as a company is my colleague AJ, a lot of this really resonated with him. He read the book, he went through the Find Your Why exercises, and then we did this on the company level. So our company why statement is enriching lives through transformative actions. And that mission, or that why statement, that company why statement, came through, not only my personal experiences, my colleagues' personal experiences, the things we want to sort of live out in our day-to-day work and working with
Yeah.
folks. It's a really big part of, just our values and what we feel and what we put into our work every day.
Well, and it really informs who you want to work with, how you want to work with them. When you're collaborating with other industries or groups, do they align with this?
Yeah.
It keeps you in alignment. It helps you set boundaries where you might need to set boundaries with certain folks. It helps you remind you of why you show up day in and day out. You've got those affirmations on the wall. You've got that firm why and those set of values to guide you. It's such a key component. And I love the transferability of your why between your personal life, because you were able to make that connection. And I tell women all the time, if your why and your values are not aligned with your work, you will feel an angst. You will feel out of sorts. And until you make a correction there, you're going to continue to feel that. Your body is there to let you know something's out of balance here. And these really help us keep that in alignment. And also, if you start feeling out of alignment, sometimes you got to re-look at that why and values every so often to make sure there doesn't need to be addendum items. Okay, what's changed as you go through different seasons, but having that and examining it and making sure everything matches up with that, that's a key part of health and wellness.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, going back to when I was sort of feeling a little lost in the business in terms of just, again, like, why am I putting myself through all this torture and decisions and, time consuming exercises and all of it. Now when I have a bad day, tough conversation with a client or, that sort of thing, it just centers me. It centers me. Everything, when I'm trying to make a decision around whether or not I want to get involved in something or not, or read something or not, or whatever it is, you can ask yourself if it is in alignment, like you said, and it really helps sort of filter out sort of the things that really maybe don't benefit you or have no value to you versus the ones that really do and that will sort of help you and enrich your life.
Thank you for that. That was so good. I appreciate that so much. All right. Living out of your own expectations versus others. You and I have talked about this a little bit before. It came up a little on the panel, the generational differences, conversations you've had to have with your mom and your family about the way you're doing things versus the way they've done things. I mean, we laughed the other day when we were at an event and you let us know that there was a food item there that was like, I know this is good at this place because my mom makes it and it's awesome, but I don't make it myself, but I know where to go to get something that's really close. And I thought like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. But you're to this day, I mean, you're someone that really carries yourself. You're very clear on those, but you've had to communicate those to people as well. So talk to me about that journey.
So, I mean, my mom is everything, so I don't want to, dismiss anything that she
absolutely
says.
These are just generational differences.
Exactly. Yeah, and we definitely, I think any mother-daughter sort of at some point starts, butting heads a little bit at some point in time. So I think we fully recognize that in our relationship. But like I talked about in panel, a little bit of like cleaning your own home, right? And I just don't have the time for it. And it's not that I don't want to do it. It's by no means is it beneath me. As a teenager, I remember my brother and I cleaned the house from top to bottom because mom and dad said this was the weekend to do it. We did it, definitely have rolled up my sleeves and gotten my hands dirty. But, do I want to clean my house or want to spend time with my kids? Thinking about those trade-offs, right? And I'd rather have somebody come in every other week, clean the house so I don't have to, and I have that much more time with the kids, or I have that much more time to go do something else, that I enjoy or whatever. It's just a generational thing. My mom still cleans her house top to bottom, and she's exhausted, and she's like, "Oh, it's taking me all day to do it." I'm like, "Mom, why do you do that? Why do you
that
put
was
yourself
a choice.
through that?"
That was a choice.
Or even like, in Indian culture, a lot of our sort of culture, revolves around food. And Melissa, you don't want me anywhere near a kitchen. Like, I can't cook. I burn water. Like, you don't want any, even my husband, like, even when I try to go in and like try to help a little bit, he's like, "No, just get out of the kitchen." Like, I don't want you ruining what I'm doing. But, my mom and her generation, my mom tells me about how she learned how to cook from her mother-in-law, how she learned how to cook from her mom, before she moved away and stuff. I have relatives, who ask me, "Do you know how to cook yet?" Like, that's just sort of been an ongoing conversation for the last 20 years. And the answer is still the same. No, I don't know how to cook. But one, I have a husband who takes really good care of me. And two, I have a mother and a mother-in-law who are fantastic cooks. So I do not go hungry. So it's just sort of like those traditional expectations that I just, it is what it is. I'm a completely different human being, and generally speaking, I think I'm a good person. And that's that. I think that's what means more in life, as opposed to knowing how to cook. I would have loved. I mean, I wish my husband was a professional chef. I know friends who married professional chefs, and I'm just like, "Oh, you guys got it right." So. But I think I've just let a lot of that stuff kind of go. And then, the other thing I was reminded of last week at the Gal event was the keynote speaker talked about how, she's a physician. And growing up, her grandmother told her, "Well, you'll never be a physician or you'll never go to medical school." Yeah. And it was, she probably said that. She didn't say that to be mean to her granddaughter. She probably said it because in her lifetime, in her generation, she never saw a female doctor.
Exactly.
And that really reminded me, that really, really hit home with me, because I was just like, my mom's never seen her mom go out in the workforce. Her mom, or her grandmother for that matter, own their own business. Manage like a bajillion things, like kids and a career and a spouse and all that. She's never seen that. My grandparents, never saw that. My uncles and aunts around the world have not seen that. So it is a very foreign concept to them. They're not trying to be mean. They're not trying to be rude. I think those are just sort of things that have stuck with me. And like I said, I think I've just kind of come to the point in life where I've just let it go. So.
Yeah. I want to go back to what you said, though. You hadn't seen that. They hadn't seen that. So how do you think you got here then? Yeah. What allowed you to step into this space as being the first generation of a woman to do this?
Yeah. So, my parents co-owned their own business growing up. So again, I learned a lot from that, learned what to do as well as what not to do.
Sure.
But, I think what I'll say is that when I was in like grade school, It's very, very competitive. Clovis Unified is a very, very competitive school district. And I kind of jumped into this environment because we moved here, when I was like 10 years old. So I got into the school system pretty early on.
Okay.
But like everything just was about grades, and it was just a very competitive environment. I felt it walking into school every day. I felt it through conversations from kids. And I just sort of felt like, oh my God, like I've got to get involved in this sport or this activity and all that if I want to go to college and have a good career and do all these things.
Yeah.
It was just sort of the environment that I was in, which was very, very different than maybe home life or otherwise. And it's not to say my parents have always valued education, have always valued, growth and going to college and all those things. But this whole idea of like having a career of my own and doing all these things like they never have done in their lifetimes was a really different concept for them. And again, I think it was just out of, to a certain degree, it was almost out of necessity, Melissa. I mean, I just sort of felt like if I'm going to compete in this competitive school environment, like I got to do stuff and I got to get active and I got to try all these things and then maybe I'll have a shot at going to college or something. So I think a lot of it came from that. I will have to say, I think both of my grandfathers were very entrepreneurial. So I think it is genetic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
There's something there. There's something there too. So that's a tough one to answer in terms of where exactly it came from, but I would suspect that had something to do with it too. So
yeah, I agree. Cause I think a lot of people, I know for me, and I'm 15 years older than you. So, but for me, even I was the first college graduate in my family, so there's always got to be that one that's the first one to kind of go out and do it. But I also want to, speak to what you said and what we heard last week from Dr. Campaign is it's really important for women and girls to see somebody that looks like them succeeding and being in these spaces and places so that they know it's possible. Because so much of, of what Danielle talked about and also what you're talking about is they've never seen it. So they had no reference point. But it also was a motivator of like, okay, but it also goes back to the importance again of us women supporting each other, us knowing what our expectations are and communicating those clearly so that we can become those women that are seen and generations behind us have confidence to like, oh, but that's possible. She's doing it. That's attainable.
Yeah. And I think, the other thing too is, I definitely feel like I get my mom's stubbornness. It's her greatest weakness and her greatest strength. I think I get it from that too, even though she hasn't seen those examples, but also like nobody's going to tell her otherwise on any particular topic, right? I feel the same way. I feel the same way with my career and my career path. Like once I sort of figured out like this was the direction I wanted to go and nobody was going to tell me otherwise. I didn't care who you were. I was going to figure this out and move forward and, do what I wanted to do from a career standpoint. So sometimes it's just like innate stubbornness that sort of says, well, you're just going to figure this out. And, if this is truly what you want to do, you just roll up your sleeves and figure it out and get it done. So,
yeah. Thank you for that. All right. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves, all the parts and pieces that make up our journeys. Some we love, some we don't, but I'm very, very committed to the idea that this is a very important part of us, knowing our value, getting curious rather than judgmental, so that we will prioritize ourselves. So we will see the need and clear the way for that. Talk to me about your layers journey.
Yeah, I think obviously life is full of ups and downs. And I think looking at those experiences equally. And, people always say, well, you're going to learn a lot from your mistakes or a lot from sort of those down periods than you will the good ones. But I think, again, looking at those different experiences and trying to pull something from positive from every single one of them, I think it helps you sort of build those layers, good ones. Um, I think back to, I mentioned a little bit of during my during the why sort of discussion about some of the stuff my parents and I went through.
Yeah.
And I feel like, gosh, I was so embarrassed. I didn't even tell anybody at work. I was just very sort of kind of kept to myself. And when I felt like I needed advice or needed to pick somebody's brain, I just sort of maybe asked them, but I didn't even like explain why or anything like that. But I feel like, experiences like that made me a better advisor, made me a better person.
Yeah.
I think, I even sort of look at it from the perspective of like, when I first started my career, it was 2006 when I was hired. 2007 was the top of the stock market, and then the Great Recession happened.
Oh my gosh!
And the bottom of the market, I remember it like it was yesterday. The bottom of the market was March of 2009, and then everything kind of took off after that. And it's experiences like that, from a professional standpoint, that I learned a heck of a lot from, in terms of just being there for clients. I tell my team all the time about the experience that I had with a client who called me. Wasn't even my client at the time. I wasn't even an advisor at the time. And she just called and yelled at me and was upset about losing money in the markets. And I was just like, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm happy to put you in touch with your advisor. Like, I just sort of was trying to talk to her and calm her down. Those experiences have made me a lot better of an advisor. I think I would have rather gone through, looking back, of course it's tough, but I would have rather gone through an experience like that first at the very beginning of my career, because it really showed me what I was made of, and really showed me some really good examples through the advisors I was working with, how they were there for their clients, how they helped them stay put. How they help them ride through the market turmoil or just the tough stuff. Yeah. And that, I mean, talk about, layers, building a thick skin in this industry is super important. And it really helped me do that. But then also, just, obviously in the last few weeks in the market and whatnot, it's been really tough. And I'm constantly reminded that these are the times that my clients need me the most. This is the time where I can show my value and expertise and really support people. And again, going back to that why statement, living out that why of supporting people in good times and in bad. It's not to sound cliche, but it's really about those experiences that just really add to how you can do your work even better. Going forward. So
absolutely. Thank you for that. So good. All right. In summary, living out F.E.E.L, finding empowerment, embracing layers, which you really do. You really walk that out well. Talk to me about the impact that has had on your relationship with yourself, as well as your relationship with other people.
Yeah, I think with myself, I'll start maybe there. Just giving myself more latitude and grace and not being so hard on myself. I definitely remember in my 20s and even in my teens how hard on myself I was just to get the perfect grade or the perfect this or the perfect that. So I think I've just like I said, I've just kind of let it go. I'm not perfect and I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm a lot wiser now and know how to maybe navigate some of that a lot better. I have more equipment in the form of life experience to help me navigate some of that. So yeah, that maybe from a personal standpoint, from other, in terms of other relationships, I think again, some of the things that I talk to my parents about or, elderly people and, in my family and stuff. And I've learned to let a lot of that stuff go. It's, like you said, you
Mm.
chalk it up to generational experiences. And I think people genuinely don't mean to be malicious in anything they say. I try to come from it from that positive angle and
Yeah.
sort of, look at it through their lens a little bit more. I'm a lot more cognizant of that now than I used to be in my 20s, where, yeah, maybe I was a little bit more stubborn and I kind of thought I knew everything. I've taken more of when it comes to relationships with others, whether you get along with others or not, really just looking at it through their lens. We talked about at the panel that, as much as we think it's written on our face, our spouse doesn't know what we're
Yes.
thinking.
Yes.
It's so true. It's so
Oh, it's
true.
so true.
And I what I'll say is that with my spouse, we're not perfect. And if anyone ever says they have a perfect relationship, they're totally lying. But,
Yeah.
I think I try to pick my battles, right? If
Mhm.
it's the cap on the toothpaste wasn't put on properly, just let it go.
Yeah.
But if it's something bigger than that, yeah, we need to sit down and talk about it,
Yep.
and just be more open about that. Being more open to just talk and get the feelings out there, I think
Yeah.
is something that I've really, really learned, over time and just kind of through some of my relationships too. And just,
Yeah.
just being more open to talking about stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Communication is such a key component because if you don't have communication, that's where the assumptions come in and guessing and imposing things and treating thoughts that are truth that aren't. I mean, it just leads you down all kinds of roads of
Yeah.
no good. And
Yeah.
I think we underestimate the power of a simple, like, take 5 minutes to have a conversation and save yourself
Yeah.
a lot of trouble. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think going back to what I said earlier about, especially in my line of work, just having this sort of no judgment zone when folks walk
Yeah.
in. Um, I will tell my 20-year-old self, like, I was so judgmental. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, again, you think you're invincible during that age, and even in your
Yeah.
teens, you think you know everything. Um, you judge success differently. You judge people's professions differently. The whole just sort of worldview is so different than it is now. And I think going into a lot of relationships, just I catch myself sometimes if I do feel like I'm being judgmental, catching yourself and just sort of say no, that they just have a different way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And taking the judgment out of it, I think, is something else that I try to bring in that aspect of relationships.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, that's something I've really had to work on too. I keep going back to, I talked about earlier, curious rather than judgmental. Get curious rather than judgmental. And
Yeah,
because
exactly.
curiosity and judgment cannot coexist together. And so
No,
that's become a really important piece for me to implement.
that's a great
Yeah.
point. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We are down to the rapid fire, my friend. Name 5
Okay.
activities. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Let's see here. I love to play tennis. I haven't played for a while, but I love to play tennis or do something competitive. So
Yeah.
that actually nourishes me. I love to listen to music. I do love to read. I read a lot of business books, but again, I'm just so curious about how to run business and what I do. So it just really feeds my curiosity,
Yeah.
and that need to learn. I love watching comedy clips. I will refrain from sharing the things that I watch. But I love watching comedy clips. Just makes my lunch hour. It just makes me feel just a little bit happier. And then holding my kids in group hugs. We do group hugs at home. Also,
Oh.
5 of us if you include the dog. So that's been a fun thing that my 2-year-old, she, anytime we just hug each other, she says group hug. And then whoever's nearby comes through. So that's always fun. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That brings back a memory. We used to do that when the girls were little too. And Brady, you met Brady. He was so big when they were little. It just became this enveloping, like thing
Yeah.
where we have
Yeah.
pictures of it, and you can just see him and his arms and these little legs sticking out. And it's so, oh my gosh, it's so sweet. Oh, I love that so much. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh, I think I wrote down 6, but I'll maybe omit one.
Give us 6. You can give us 6.
Yeah, I'll give you 6. Impactful, growth or progress. So those can be sort of synonymous. Energized, healthier, and fulfillment, I think were the ones I came up with.
I love that. Oh, so good. All right. Tell people how they can find you and follow you. And yes, this will all be on embracinglayers.com, on our website, on the resources page, but let people know right now where that would be.
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So they can find me on my LinkedIn page. I think it's just at Tina Mistry. Maybe the letter CFP after it, something like that. But I'm on LinkedIn, so they can find me. And then our company has a LinkedIn page too, Portfolio Advisors Inc. So you can find us there too. And then on our website, portadvisors.com, which is short for portfolioadvisors.com, but it's portadvisors.com. Yeah, we have a lot of really great resources. We started webinars this year. So we have a really good webinars on obviously recent market activities and how to manage emotions, and how to stay put. And then we've done some education around what people need to know when seeking financial advice so they don't get scammed, as well as there's been some recent changes around Social Security. So really our pre-retiree market that's been really helpful to them. So yeah, hopefully we've got a podcast coming where we've got a lot of other marketing things in the works. But yeah, our website and LinkedIn are the best places to find me. So
all right. Well, when the podcast starts, we'll have to bring you back and let you kick that off, because it's what you do with those webinars is such great information. So we have listeners for all over the world. So tell me, how many of those people can you work with versus you refer out?
Yeah. So from a licensing standpoint, it's helpful to know that I'm licensed throughout the U.S. So I can practice across the U.S. I can really practice across the world. I just don't, quote unquote, solicit business outside of the U.S. If they come to me, great, that's fine. But so no harm, no foul there.
Okay.
Yeah, I can work with people across the country. And, our key demographics are sort of fit into one of 3 categories: people who are retired, people who are 5 to 7 years away from retiring, which I will say is our bread and butter. We are really good in that market. And then something I like to call mid-career professionals, people who are maybe just starting out or just kind of got that first 6-figure job, starting a family, have all these sort of dynamics. We're really good at helping those three folks. And what I'll also add too, Melissa, is that, our company is celebrating 35 years of being in business this year. So we're super excited about that. And because we've been around for so long, we're already working with the 3rd or 4th generations of some of the families that we originally started serving in the early 90s. So that's why we kind of work with those 3 different sort of demographics, because it's just sort of in a natural sort of flow of the family, I guess.
Yeah. You're working with the parents here and you're working with their kids here as they get that first, job, and they're planning their family and college funds and retirement and all those things. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I just feel very fortunate to be in this line of work where I can help people in some fashion. Some of my, as tough as some of the conversations can be, some of my favorite, more positive conversations are, when I have that conversation with folks and I can tell them they can retire, they've done everything that they can, and, hey, go quit your job, something like that.
Yeah, you can give notice.
Go for it. Start planning that trip, or, I often hear about, kids getting into college or graduating college, and those are fun conversations. I think I just feel very fortunate to be a part of those different life events, because, we like to work with people for a really long time. I like to be working with the kids and their grandkids eventually and introduce them and help educate them along the way. We really do come from a place of education. So yeah, it's not transactional for us. It's all about the relationships. And yeah, like I said, I just feel very, very fortunate to be able to do what I can do. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love what you do and how you do it, because this is an industry, you and I've talked about this before, that there are some bad actors, and you all are such the opposite of that. You're such a breath of fresh air and how you approach this. So ladies, if you're listening to this and these are resources you need, go to embracinglayers.com, have a conversation with Tina. AJ, her partner's fantastic too. They're both great. They're there to hear. They're here to support you in this. But take care of that financial health piece. That is a part of your self-care. So make sure you understand what's happening there. And even if you split stuff, like Brady and I split things, but he and I know where to find each other's stuff. So if something happens, we know where to find it so that we can access those things with needed. Just make sure you have the information you need. If you've had a bad actor, we've had a bad actor in the past as a financial advisor. So we, and we will be meeting with Tina in 2025 to talk about our stuff and get it, and because we're kind of working with somebody that's kind of neutral, doesn't really know us, and there's just not really a relationship there. But you'll be pleasantly surprised, or if you've had one of those, that that she and her people are really there to support you. They really are authentically about the relationship, and they want to be with you through all these seasons in your life.
Thank you, Melissa. That really means a lot. I think for AJ and I, and I'm kind of grooming, some other, gentlemen in the office to become advisors and sort of helping them get their licensing and teach them the ropes. And for us, it's about impact. It's, how do we reach as many people and work with many people and help as many people as possible? And I forgot to mention too that we should be having a speakers page go up on our website soon too. So AJ and I are, willing to come out to, we've spoken at groups of students at Fresno State. We've spoken to attorneys' offices, whether it's like a local Rotary Club or some sort of community organization. We're happy to come out and speak on a specific topic too. So yeah, we can kind of cater the presentation to the audience too. So we're happy to do that as well. It's about getting the education out there and making an impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm so thankful to know you. I love the way you show up in the world. And again, ladies, tons of resources here for you, but also so many good nuggets in what Tina talked about today and how she prioritizes her wellness and sets those boundaries and communicates those expectations, the core why and values piece, how she shows up unapologetically in the things that she supports. And there's so much to pull from this today. But take good care of yourselves. Find that financial advisor you trust. Deal with that part of your health and relieve stressors that don't have to be there. And that's such a key component here that sometimes gets lost in the discussion. And so I'm so happy to be able to provide those resources with that. If you have any questions, let us know. embracinglayers@gmail.com. We can get those to Tina or just reach out to her directly. But we hope you found this helpful and resourceful. Take good care of yourselves and have a great day. Hello, Melissa Crook here. Thank you so much for joining us on the F.E.E.L Podcast today, Finding Empowerment, Embracing Layers. I hope you found today's framework and resources supportive and informative. To learn more about all that we offer here at the Embracing Layers Network, visit embracinglayers.com. You can go to our contact form to schedule me as a speaker for your next conference, workshop, or seminar. You can go to our book page to order our book that Jessica Garrison, our wonderful and talented writer and author, authored with my support. and engage with this framework in written form with your journal or in a book club with other women, inviting them on this journey with you. You can look at our resources page for all of the helpful and insightful resources our guests offer and share. You can find the schedule for our weekly Together We F.E.E.L women's panel conversations that we're holding each Monday on our YouTube channel. And you can find the links to all the spaces and places you can follow, engage with us on social media, and join our engagements that are happening on our Substack site. There is also a donation page where you can donate to support our work to ensure we can continue to bring you these incredible guests, conversations, and support. Thanks again for joining me this week. Share with your friends and give us a review on your favorite listening platform. Your feedback helps us ensure we're bringing you the content that will best support you in having an empowered, embracing layers journey. Take good care, and thanks for giving us some of your valuable time today. We truly appreciate you so deeply.